And this is why Karen Armstrong, I think, did such an extraordinary job in that book, A Prophet for Our Time, Muhammad, A Prophet for Our Time, because I think what Karen Armstrong, and she says this in the outset, that it was very disturbing to her to see the Prophet denigrated, the way he was being denigrated as a militant prophet, when she said, this is a man who spent his entire life trying to solve the problem of human conflict. This is what he was born into, a society of cycles of violence that were unending. Right at the time that he was coming into adulthood, there had been a war that lasted 40 years over a horse race. This was the Arabian Peninsula. 40 years over a horse race. And they even call it Harbu Dahis wa Ghabra. We even know the names of the horses between the Abs and the Dhibyan. 40 years. The man that started the war ended up becoming a monk because he said he could not bear he couldn't bear to look at the faces of his tribesmen, knowing the harm that he had inflicted and the pain and suffering that he had inflicted on all the people that died in that war. Haram ibn Sinan, who's celebrated by Zuhair ibn Abi Sulma, the father of Ka'b ibn Zuhair, who praised the Prophet ﷺ. This is what the Arabs, this is what they were living. He wrote his great Mu'allaqa in praise of the men that ended this war by paying all the diyat of these people just to bring this thing to an end. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ was. He was fighting to end these ridiculous cycles of violence that were endemic in this part of the world. And that's why it's particularly disturbing to see Muslims fighting amongst each other and killing each other in the name of his religion. And he said, لا ترجعوا بعد كفارا يضرب بعضكم رقاب بعض. Do not return as ingrates, because the ulama say it doesn't mean kuffar, disbelievers, ingrates of the blessing of Allah that He united you. Don't become ingrates after this by striking the necks of one another. So it's important to know the Prophet ﷺ was not in any way a belligerent person. He was not militant by nature. He was actually quite the opposite. He was a very gentle person. He always preferred diplomatic means to resolve things, and we see this many, many times in the seerah. He also, if you look, in his 23 years, less than 1,000 people died in total. So all of these battles were not like we see today, where in one day that number happens or more. It was a very different time. They were very chivalrous people. They honored chivalry. They fought face to face. They confronted on the battle. They did not attack women and children. The Prophet ﷺ, when they found the dead woman, the Sahaba were looking at it and at this woman who had died in a battle, and the Prophet ﷺ asked what had happened, and Khalid ibn Walid, this was very late at Ta'if, Khalid ibn Walid had killed a woman, and the Prophet ﷺ said, go and tell Khalid, نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن قتل النساء والأولاد والعسيف, that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited killing women, children, or servants, domestic servants. Now what that means in our language in modern times is non-combatants, because in the Arab world, any man who was young, he had a sword and he was expected to defend like a militia. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that, and that hadith, by the way, is mutawatir in different variations. There's over 50 Sahaba that narrate that hadith.
محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم. محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن